Listen to me. There are moments when everything around you begins to shift, when doors close, relationships fade, and the familiar grows strangely uncomfortable. Don't panic. Don't fight it, because that shaking you feel is not destruction, it is construction. Heaven is rearranging your life to make any room for what you've been praying for. The blessing you've been waiting on doesn't arrive in comfort. It comes through divine disruption. When God is about to bless you, everything changes. You may not realize it, but heaven speaks through silence. Sometimes God will remove your emotional crutches so you can stand on the strength of your spirit. He will let people misunderstand you so you can learn that your value is not in being understood, but in being chosen. He will separate you from what you cling to, not to punish you, but to position you. This is where emotional and spiritual detachment (NNT) begins, not as a rejection of life, but as a revelation of trust. There comes a moment when God asks you to release what you love most, your plans, your desires, your image, even your comfort. And in that letting go, something extraordinary happens. Peace enters. Not the peace that comes from control, but the peace that comes from surrender. You realize your worth is not tied to what you hold, but to who holds you. Detachment is not the loss of care. It is the gain of clarity. It is saying, Father, I no longer need to manipulate outcomes. I am content to rest in your plan. If you are in yourself in a season where God is removing people, opportunities, or even emotions that once felt safe, rejoice. It means you are being refined for something greater. God will never bless hands that are still clinging to yesterday. He will never pour new oil into old vessels. When everything feels less like it says slipping away, heaven is often whispering, now I can trust you. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is courage. It is the quiet strength that says, even if I lose everything, I will not lose my peace. It's what happens when faith becomes mature, when you no longer need cons and reassurance to keep believing. You walk with confidence, not because everything is certain, but because you have seen enough of God to know that uncertainty is where He works best. The moment you stop trying to control people, outcomes, and timing, you begin to feel lighter. You start noticing that your spirit is no longer tied to anxiety. The storm may still rage, but inside you there is calm. This is the divine paradox. When you detach from fear, you attract favor. When you stop striving, grace starts moving. When God is about to bless you, He will first test your attachment. He will ask, can I trust you to hold the blessing without letting it hold you? He blesses not those who crave control, but those who can carry peace. The weight of glory requires hands that are free, hearts that are steady, and minds that are quiet. So if everything is changing, don't resist. The shaking is not your ending TS your elevation. Detach from what no longer serves your purpose. Detach from fear, from worry, from the need to be understood. Because detachment is not losing yourself, it's finding the part of you that cannot be shaken. And when that happens, when your spirit is truly free to parlend, you will hear heaven's whisper again, now you are ready. Now I can bless you. Detachment is not abandonment, but alignment. Many people misunderstand this truth. They think that to detach means to stop caring, to walk away from responsibility, or to numb their hearts. But in reality, true detachment is not about closing your heart, it is about opening it wider to God's will. It is the art of aligning your emotions, desires, and expectations with heaven's rhythm, not the world's noise. When you detach, you are not rejecting life, you are inviting divine order into it. You are saying, Lord, I will no longer let my emotions dictate my destiny. I choose to align with what you are doing, even when I don't understand it. That is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. There is a peace that only comes when you stop fighting what God has already finished. Detachment allows that peace to flow. The moment you stop trying to control everything around you, the anxiety begins to fade. Because control is born from fear, but alignment is born from trust. And trust is the foundation of all faith. The heart that trusts God has no need to grasp tightly at what is fading. It simply res enantis, knowing that what is meant to remain will stay, and what is meant to leave was never the source of your destiny. This is where detachment becomes divine alignment. It repositions your soul to receive without resistance. There will be seasons when God allows what you built to fall apart, not because He is cruel, but because He is correcting your foundation. You may weep, you may question, you may wonder why the things you loved are slipping through your fingers. But understand this, sometimes God must empty your hands so He can fill them again. The detachment is not punishment, it is prepara and tion. Heaven cannot align you with your true purpose while you are still chained to temporary attachments. When you hold on to what was, you block what is coming. But when you let go, you align yourself with divine timing. True alignment requires courage, the courage to release what you cannot control, the courage to trust God's silence, the courage to move when He says move, even when it costs you something precious. Detachment does not mean your heart grows cold. It means your heart grows wise. It knows that not every loss is tragedy. Some losses are transitions. You begin to understand that detachment is a sacred posture of readiness. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to ask, what is this preparing me for? When you live from alignment, you begin to discern the hand of God in every disruption. The friend who left, the opportunity that closed, the dream that subverted him to die, all of it becomes part of a greater orchestration. God uses detachment to pull you out of distractions and recenter your vision. Because sometimes your heart is too entangled with the temporary to see the eternal. The pain of detachment often hides the protection of divine alignment. You may not see it now, but one day you will look back and realize that what God removed was never rejection. It was redirection. Detachment demands faith. It asks you to trust that when something leaves, God has already prepared what will take its place. It is choosing to remain at peace in uncertainty. Why? Confident that your life is not spinning out of control. It is being aligned into order. Faith that clings too tightly becomes fear in disguise. But faith that releases becomes freedom. You stop living from reaction and start living from revelation. You stop trying to make things happen and you start letting things unfold according to divine purpose. When your heart is aligned with heaven, you don't chase what's fading, you attract what's meant for you. You no longer beg for doors to open, they open on their own. Because your spirit has become synchronized with God's will. You stop saying, Lord, bless my plan, and you start saying, Lord, align me with yours. That is the moment you move from striving to flowing, from forcing to fulfilling. Everything you need begins to find you because alignment draws provision, peace, and purpose like a magnet. So when God begins to detach you from people, places, or plans, don't resist it. That detachment is divine. It is heaven calling you to a higher frequency where your emotions no longer control your obedience and your peace no longer depends on circumstances. Detachment is the bridge between the old you and the you that is ready for blessing. It is where your will bends to His will, where your plans surrender to His purpose. When you finally align with what God is doing, you will see that what left your life had to leave. And what stayed had to stay. For alignment is not about losing control. It is about giving God permission to Eid. And when he leads, absolutely everything begins to align for your good. Heaven often strips before it supplies. When God is about to release something great into your life, he does not begin by adding, he begins by removing. It may look like loss. It may feel like rejection. But in Entan Bar E unseen realm, heaven is at work pruning, refining, and preparing you for a weight you cannot yet carry. The divine pattern is always subtraction before multiplication. God empties before he fills. He tears down what was built on weak foundations so he can rebuild something that will last. And thou, it hurts. That stripping is sacred. It is heaven's way of saying, you are too close to destiny to be burdened by what no longer belongs. When God strips, it's not because he wants to embarrass or abandon you. It's because he wants to expose what has been hiding beneath the surface. There are adherent attachments that look like blessing, NGS, but are really barriers. There are people, habits, emotions, and mindsets that cannot follow you into the next level of purpose. The stripping is heaven's surgery. It cuts away what is comfortable so that what is divine can breathe. God cannot fill a cup that is already full. So he allows life to pour out what no longer serves his purpose in you. It may look like everything is falling apart, but in truth, everything is falling into alignment. Many people pray for new beginnings, but resist necessary endings. Yet God will not answer prayers for promotion, while you cling to positions that keep you small. Before Abraham could become the father of nations, he had to leave his homeland. Before Joseph could wear the robe of royalty, he had to lose the robe of favoritism. Before Jesus could rise, he had to be stripped of everything, even his garments. Every divine elevation is preceded by a divine separation. Heaven removes before it restores. The pruning always comes before the promise. If you feel like God is stripping things from you, your comfort, your circle, your confidence, understand this: you are being refined, not rejected. The stripping season, is not a sign of divine anger. It is a sign of divine trust. God trusts you enough to take you through the process. He knows your spirit is strong enough to stand naked in faith, stripped of human support, clothed only in his word. When everything familiar fades, that is when you learn that God alone is enough. The things that once defined you fall away so that your true identity in him can emerge. In the stripping, your prayers change. You stop asking for ease and start asking for endurance. You stop begging for comfort and start craving clarity. You stop holding on to what's fading and start itching for what's eternal. The pain of losing what you thought you needed becomes the doorway to discovering what you truly are. God strips away every false layer so that the divine core of your being, your faith, your purpose, your calling, can stand pure and unshaken. The stripping also exposes the strength of your surrender. When you lose something valuable and still say, God, I trust you, heaven takes notice. It is easy to praise when everything adds up, but it is holy to praise when everything subtracts. When you can lift your hands in loss, you have entered a level of maturity where RSSing becomes inevitable. Because God never ends with less. When he takes, it is to make room. When he closes one door, it is because he's building another that leads further than you imagined. But until you walk through the valley of stripping, you will never see the mountain of supply. Heaven's economy is different from Earth's. Down here, we think subtraction is defeat. But in heaven, subtraction is strategy. God removes people who no longer serve your destiny, not because they are evil, but because their assignment in your story is complete. He removes opportunities that no longer align your growth. He allows certain dreams to die because he's preparing new ones that carry your real purpose. And sometimes He even strips away your confidence so that faith can take its rightful place. The stripping is not destruction, it is divine editing. God is rewriting your story, line by line and tipartanan, until every chapter glorifies Him. So when heaven strips, do not panic, do not curse the loss. Stand still and see the salvation of your God. The things leaving your life are not taking your future with them, they are making space for it. The blessing that is coming cannot coexist with the clutter hat once surrounded you. You are being emptied so that the oil can flow freely. You are being pruned so that you can bear much fruit. You are being stripped not because you are forgotten, but because you are chosen. When you finally understand this, peace returns. You begin to thank God for the closed doors, the ended friendships, the disappointments that redirected your steps. You stop mourning what left and start marveling at what's next. Heaven often strips before it supplies. And once the stripping is complete, once your heart is clear and your hands are open, the supply will come swiftly, abundantly, unmistakably, and you will know that every loss was never really loss at all. It was preparation for a blessing too great to carry any other way. Faith thrives in stillness, not in struggle. The power of God does not reveal itself in noise, panic, or striving. It manifests in the quiet HRRT that has learned to rest. The world teaches us to hustle, to push harder, to fight for every inch of progress, but heaven moves differently. Heaven does not respond to desperation, it responds to alignment. When you are still, not because you've given up, but because you've surrendered, you enter the atmosphere where faith can breathe. Stillness is not inactivity. It is spiritual focus. It is the point where human effort ends and divine power begins. There are moments when you have prayed all you can pray, worked all you can work, cried all you can cry, and still nothing changes. That's why NBR in heaven whispers, be still. Because the silence of faith often carries more power than the noise of effort. When you reach that still point, you are no longer wrestling to make things happen, you are trusting that they already are. God moves most mightily in hearts that are not consumed by fear or delay. When you stop striving, you begin to notice that the Spirit of God was never far away. It was your noise that made Him seem distant. Faith is not proven in movement, but in peace. Anyone can believe when they can see the way forward, but true faith is standing still when every door looks closed and they are said, and still saying, God, I know you are working. The still heart becomes the stage for divine manifestation. When you quiet your anxiety, heaven begins to perform. Stillness is not passive, it is prophetic. It declares, I am so certain of God's goodness that I don't need to fight to make it happen. And pen. That confidence draws He's supernatural. God honors stillness because it reveals trust. In Scripture, when the Israelites stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind them, panic filled their hearts. But the word from heaven was not fight. It was stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The miracle did not come from their struggle, it came from their stillness. When they stopped running, the sea began to part. This is how heaven operates. As long as you are striving, God waits. The moment you become still, God moves. Stillness opens the gates of divine intervention. There is a stillness that comes from exhaustion. And then there is a stillness that comes from revelation. The first says, I can't do this anymore. The second says, I don't have to. That second stillness is faith in its purest form. It is the quiet confidence that knows God is not late. That every MBR thing unfolding is according to divine sequence. Faith is not impatient, it is anchored. It waits without worry, expects without evidence, and rests without fear. The faith that thrives in stillness is not easily shaken by delay because it understands that delay is not denial, it is divine, choreographed, and beyond high. When you cultivate stillness, your spirit begins to hear what your emotions have been drowning out. God's voice is rarely heard in chaos. It speaks in whispers, not shouts. The reason many cannot discern his direction is not because he is silent, but because they are too loud inside. They pray with noise, but lack quietness of heart. Stillness refines your hearing. It removes the static of fear, doubt, and impatience, allowing revelation to flow freely. In stillness, answers rise naturally, wisdom becomes clear. The fog of confusion lifts, and the peace of knowing takes its place. The great and the artist's miracles often begin with stillness. The widow who stood before the prophet with nothing left but a jar of oil, didn't he need more effort? She needed divine instruction, which came only when she stopped panicking. Jesus, asleep in the storm, wasn't he worried about the waves because stillness was his natural state of authority? The storm could not move him because his peace was greater than its power. When you live from stillness, storms lose their strength over you. The world may shake, but inside you remain unshaken. That is where faith thrives, in the silence between your surrender and God's apply. There will come a time when God will tell you to stop fighting for what you've already won. He will ask you to rest in his promise, not wrestle for his approval. And when you do, you will notice something profound. Things begin to fall into place with little effort. Opportunities align, doors open and the yard pen. Hearts change, all because your spirit became still. Stillness does not attract nothingness, it attracts the miraculous. It's the state where faith becomes a magnet for manifestation. So, if you are in a season of waiting, do not fill it with worry. Let your stillness be your warfare. Refuse to be moved by what you see. Anchor your soul in trust and say, God, I will not fight to make this happen. I will stand still and let you be God. The most powerful believers are not the loudest, they are the most peaceful. Their confidence in God's timing gives them authority over chaos. They have discovered that stillness is not the absence of power, it is the birthplace of it. When you finally understand this truth, you stop trying to push your destiny forward with human hands. You begin to live from rest, not from rush. And in that sacred stillness, faith grows roots deep into eternity. The storm may rage, but inside you, there will be quiet strength, a calm assurance that whispers, it is already done. That is where faith thrives, in the stillness that trusts, even before the miracle comes. Detachment is the language of trust. It is how your soul says to God, I believe you are H. It is how faith speaks when words fall short. To detach is not to disconnect from love, but to release the illusion of control. It is to love without fear, to give without demand, to walk without needing to see every step. Detachment is not indifference. It is divine confidence. It says, Faith the deeper are, I trust your wisdom more than my understanding. I trust your timing more than my plans. I trust your process more than my perception. When you reach that level of surrender, heaven recognizes your faith as complete. There are moments in life when you will have no clear answers. Doors will close and doors will end. People will change. Seasons will shift. And everything you thought was stable will suddenly become uncertain. It is in those moments that God calls you to the sacred act of detachment. He whispers, will you trust me enough to let go? Because trust is proven not by how loudly you pray, but by how willingly you release. Faith without detachment is only theory. But when you can stand in the middle of loss and still say, God, you are good, your trust has matured, that is when heaven begins to move. Detachment does not mean you stop caring about the outcome. It means you have decided not to let the outcome control you. It means you love deeply, work diligently, and give fully, but you leave the results in God's hands. You no longer demand that life conform to your expectations. You surrender the how, the when, and the why to the one who knows all things. That surrender becomes detachment, the purest expression of trust. When you let go, you make room for miracles. When you release what you cannot manage, God begins to manage what you cannot see. Trust is not built in comfort. It is built in uncertainty. It is when you walk through silence, delay, or confusion and still choose peace. The BR said your spirit declares, I trust you, Lord. Many think trust means expecting God to do what they want, but true trust means resting in whatever God chooses to do. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes, and you begin to flow with divine orchestration. Every time you release control, your trust deepens. Every time you choose peace over panic, heaven draws loser. Detachment is the voice of mature faith, the kind of faith that doesn't need evidence to stay anchored. God often brings us into seasons where everything feels like a test of trust. He allows you to be misunderstood, to wait longer than you expected, to lose what you thought you needed, all to teach your spirit the rhythm of release. The moment you stop resisting and start resting, divine alignment begins. What you were chasing starts finding you. What you were worried about begins to resolve itself. Because trust activates have and debar and S order. The language of trust speaks in silence. It says, even if I don't understand this season, I know the one who governs it. That is where peace lives, not in certainty, but in surrender. When you detach in trust, your heart stops fluctuating with circumstances. You become steady, even when in the world around you is unstable. You begin to understand that trust is not a feeling, it's a decision. You choose to believe that God's plan is still unfolding, even when the evidence looks opposite. That choice turns storms into classrooms, pain into purpose, and waiting into worship. You stop trying to fix everything, because you know it's not your job to carry what belongs to God. Detachment teaches you the holy art of rest. You learn to walk through fire without fear, because your faith has become your atmosphere. Many people pray for miracles, yet hold on to the very things that block it, but miracles are born in empty hands. God cannot fill what you refuse to release. Trust is not about holding tighter. It's about loosening your grip. It's about saying, even if I don't have it, I still have you. And that is enough. That level of trust opens supernatural doors. It shifts heaven's attention, because God always moves where trust is present. When he sees a heart that no longer fears loss, he releases gain. When he finds a soul that no longer demands proof, he pours out blessing without limit. There is a power that comes when you finally say, Lord, I trust you more than I esteem myself. That moment changes everything. The anxiety fades. The striving stops. The rest of faith begins. You no longer pray from desperation. You pray from assurance. You no longer walk with trembling. You walk with quiet strength. Detachment becomes the river where peace flows freely and purple and Tabor sea unfolds naturally. When you live in that flow, you begin to see the beauty in uncertainty. You no longer chase signs, you become one. Your life starts to speak the silent sermon of trust. That real faith is not loud, but unshakable, not desperate, but peaceful, not controlling, but surrendered. Detachment is the language of trust, and trust is the language of heaven when you speak it fluently. Everything that belongs to you will come without struggle. For when you let go completely, God takes hold completely, and nothing can stop what he has prepared for you. When everything begins to shift, when what was once certain starts to fade, Do not see it as loss se. It as the hand of God aligning your life with His higher purpose. The stripping, the stillness, the detachment, they are not punishments, they are invitations. Each moment of surrender is heaven preparing you for the blessing that see unbarred and not dwell in cluttered hearts. The divine process may feel painful, but it is purposeful. God never takes without the intention to multiply. He never allows endings without preparing greater beginnings. When you finally stop fighting and start trusting, you enter into divine rhythm. You realize at what left your life was never your source. It was simply a vessel God used for a season. The real source has always been Him. Detachment becomes peace. Stillness becomes strength. Trust becomes your language of victory. And in that sacred space of surrender, heaven begins to unfold what has been WNWRs and aiding for you all along. So when God begins to detach, to strip, to still your heart, don't resist it. Let Him. Because you are not being empty to stay empty. You are being refined for fullness. You are not losing your way. You are being guided into destiny. Everything that seemed to fall apart, well, that's actually falling into divine order. This is the mystery of blessing. Before God releases it, He first rebuilds you to carry it. When that process is complete, peace will rest where fear once lived. Joy will bloom where disappointment once grew. Confidence will rise where confusion once reigned. And NBRDRD, you will stand quietly before God, no longer anxious, no longer striving, no longer clinging, just trusting. Then heaven will whisper, now you are ready. Now I can bless you. Everything changes when you reach that place. The struggle ends. The striving ceases. The waiting transforms into fulfillment. Because when trust becomes foundation, blessing becomes inevitable. And you will know beyond doubt or fear that the shaking was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you for glory.